So just like my video on the trick that fooled Einstein, this video will be part explanation and part history. So if you're only interested in one certain part of the video, so if you're only interested in history or you're only interested in the explanation, I've placed chapters down just like with every single one of my videos, so you can fast forward to that specific section that you want to listen to or that you want to view. So without further ado, let's get into the main part of the video, which is Vernon. So Vernon, most of you who are magicians, will know him as the Professor. This is a title that he gained for his vast knowledge in magic, and also like his theory on sleight of hand. He also took in a whole bunch of proteges, as in like a whole bunch of very, very notable names, including Ricky Jay, Larry Jennings, Max Maven, Bruce Servan, I don't know why I butchered that, Bruce Servan, John Carney, and many, many, many more. Hence his title as the Professor, because he's like a teacher teaching all his little students like, oh yeah, here's my knowledge and all that stuff. So it is not a title to be taken lightly. But he also has another title to go by, and that is the man who fooled Houdini. Now, let's give some historical context as to how Vernon actually gained this title. So, in Houdini's early days as a performer, he actually performed magic, more specifically, card magic. Houdini even went as far as to give himself the moniker, the King of Cards, and even claimed that he could figure out any card trick if you showed it to him 3 times in a row. And as we all know from there, the rest is sort of history, he sort of shifted away from card tricks and focused more on escape acts. It was during that shift, during that climb to fame that Houdini had, that Vernon went up to him and he showed him one particular effect. This effect was apparently shown to him 7 times, and after like the 7th time, Houdini's wife, who is named, sorry, I'm going to read this out, Wilhelmina Beatrice Rayner, I'm so sorry, I can't pronounce this name, told him, quote, "Face it, Houdini, you're fooled," unquote. After that, Vernon would actually use the title, The Man Who Fooled Houdini, in his advertisements in many years to follow. But to fool Houdini, the effect had to be something special, right? Well, let's go see for yourself. So I just wanted to show you something that's more specifically meant for magicians, but you know, why is the reverse card? There we go. So I just wanted to show you something that's more specifically meant for magicians, but it is sort of an interesting little thing. So first off, can you just name any card? Let's just say you named the Ace of Spades, all right? The Ace of Spades. This is going to be relatively interesting because if we actually take our ace, all right, and we turn it over the top of the deck, now watch, if we actually place it second from top, openly and cleanly like that, with just a little toss like so, you can actually see the ace actually rises to the top of the deck with no double lifts, because this card is actually a single card. Very, very interesting, right? Let's try that again. We take our Ace of Spades and we actually place it second from top like so, very, very openly, very deliberately. Watch. Just like that, our ace comes back to the top of the deck. And again, it is a single card. Now watch, here, we're going to do something that's a bit more deliberate, right? If we take our ace, and now we very openly flip it over, and we place it second from top, just like that. Now there's no way that the Ace of Spades could actually be on top of the deck, right? Well, that's very interesting because it actually rises back to the top of the deck with no face-up cards, with no multiple turnovers, because right here, these are all face-down cards, which means that there can be no double lift and no trickery. So that is sort of an interesting effect over here. Now, before I get into the explanation for the effect, I just want to address a couple of misconceptions regarding the effect itself. So most of these will actually be addressed in the Revelations tapes by Vernon himself, but I just sort of want to like address them publicly, so then it's easier to sort of search things up and all that stuff. Okay. So the first misconception is that nobody knows what trick Vernon performed to fool Houdini. So that's actually a very common misconception, especially when it comes to lay people. So a lot of lay people sources will say, oh yeah, no one knows what trick Vernon actually performed to fool Houdini. But the real reason why nobody actually knows, well, nobody besides like magicians, actually knows why Vernon, or what trick Vernon used to fool Houdini, is because, this is actually kind of funny. So Vernon, every time someone would go up to Vernon and ask him to perform, oh yeah, can you show me the trick that you did to fool Houdini, Vernon would actually show them. Everyone who asked that trick, who asked to see that trick, he would show them something different. Sometimes he would show them like a rope trick. Sometimes he would show them like a coin trick. Every single time he would just show different people different things, and so that serves two purposes. One, Vernon could actually just practice different things, and two, it served to validate the audience members. So the audience members, in their mind, apparently they were like, oh yeah, if it fooled Houdini, naturally it would fool me too. So then it would sort of like be like a little boost in their ego or whatever like that. So that served two purposes. But then it also served to spread the myth that no one knew what trick Vernon did to actually fool Houdini, when all along was just Vernon just trolling everyone to some degree. So that is the first misconception. Now the second misconception regarding this effect is more for magicians, but the second misconception is that Vernon used a tilt or a depth illusion for this effect. That's actually not true. So for magicians familiar with this story, Vernon, it's no secret that Vernon actually did an ACR, or an ambitious card routine. Now, if you're not familiar with an ambitious card routine, you're probably at the wrong place. But an ambitious card routine is where you would slip a card into the center, and through impossible conditions, it would actually go back to the top of the deck. That would be what an ACR is. But most people actually assume that he did a move called the tilt or the depth illusion. Because the way that magicians think is that when they hear a description, what happens, they automatically associate a method with it. Now, the ACR that Vernon actually did is, well, he slid the card second from top. Magicians, upon hearing that, would interpret it as a sleight. That sleight in particular would be the tilt or the depth illusion. But that's actually not true, because in performance, he would actually openly slip the card second from top. So it is not meant to be a sleight, but an overt and deliberate action. So that is where the second misconception is. He did not use a sleight, he did not use the depth illusion or the tilt for this move, for this effect. It was a deliberate action meant to actually make this effect more fooling. So those are the two misconceptions that I want to address regarding this effect. Now, for this effect, you'll need two things. One is a double turnover. So if you don't know any sort of double turnover, you're probably in the wrong place. The other thing that you need is a double backer. A double backer is a card where both sides are backs. So those are the two things that you need. Basically the only two things that you need, okay? Just a normal double turnover. Doesn't matter what it is. It can be a pinky count. It can be a push-off double turnover. Doesn't really matter. All it matters is that you know a double turnover. The second thing is a double backer. So Vernon actually teaches an ungimmicked version in the Revelations tapes, but I won't go over that. I'll only go over the gimmick version here because that's actually the one that fooled Houdini. You can learn the ungimmicked version in the download. I placed it in the link in the comments as per usual, okay? So to start with this effect, you're going to start with the double backer on top of the deck. It doesn't really matter if you give it a shuffle or a false shuffle. It really doesn't matter because you're just going to turn the deck over and you could just cut it straight to the top again. It really doesn't matter as long as you start with the double backer on top of the deck, okay? The next thing that you're going to do is that you're just going to spread through the deck and you're going to ask the spectator to name out any card that they like. For explanation purposes, I'm going to take out the ace of spades, okay? You're then going to openly display the ace, and then you're going to have you're going to turn the deck back face down. Okay. Next, you're going to take your ace of spades and you're going to place it on top of the deck, on top of the double backer. Okay. So now you have your face up ace and double backer right on the bottom, like so. Okay. Next, you're going to execute a double turnover. So you can either get a pinky count going, so you can take the double backer with the ace of spades, or you can do a double push off. Doesn't really matter as long as you do a double, okay? So now, when you turn over this double, this actually reverses the positions of the ace of spades and the double backer. So now your double backer is on top of the deck, and your ace of spades is second from top, okay? So the reason why you're actually using a double backer is because if you actually just placed the selection on top of a regular card, look at what happens if I just do a regular double turnover. There would be a face-up card, which is not great. So the reason why this effect is actually effective is because you're able to actually show that's still a back, which means that this is a convincer for magicians that this is only one card. That's still the ace of spades because there's no face-up discrepancy over there, okay? So now that you have your double backer on top of the deck and the ace of spades second from top, you're going to openly push over the double backer, which they assume is the ace of spades. You're going to push over the ace of spades, the second from top card, and now you're going to openly slide the double backer underneath of the ace of spades. So now it seems like that you're openly placing the selection second from top, okay? But now you can execute a single, right? A single turnover and display that the ace of spades is back on top of the deck. But because it's a double backer, there will not be a discrepancy, okay? So now that you have that, you can actually just openly push over the ace of spades, and then you can just display that it is a single card, okay? Now you're going to repeat this. So you're basically just going to do this twice, okay? So you're going to place the ace back on top of the deck, execute a double turnover, placing the double backer back on top of the deck with the ace of spades second from top, all right? Push off the double backer and slide it underneath into the second from top position. Execute a single turnover, and then display that the ace of spades is back on top of the deck without any sort of a multiple turnover, like so. And now there will be a second phase. So now that you have the ace of spades over here, what you're going to do is that you're basically just going to do like a really crappy top change. So you're just going to push over the double backer. You're just going to place the ace of spades on top of the deck, face up, while your right hand just grabs the double backer like so, okay? And now you're just going to use this double backer to flip this card over. So you're basically deliberately and openly showing that the selection or the ace of spades is going second from top, all right, like so. And now you're going to place the double backer on top. So now in the magician's mind, in the spectator's mind, there's no way that the double backer, or there's no way that the selection can be on top of the deck. But now you can just openly execute a double turnover, and then you can display the selection is back on top of the deck. And because it's a double backer, there will be no discrepancy. So now, when you execute the double turnover, you can execute a single and just openly show that the ace of spades is back on top of the deck with no double lifts and double turnovers, and it's a single, okay? So this is the routine that fooled Houdini. It's a relatively short effect, but in the magician's mind, you can sort of understand why it's so fooling, especially because of this one little thing that causes the lack of any discrepancies that would usually exist within this sort of effect, okay? So that is basically the I guess it would be 3 phases of this effect, 2 which repeat, and then 3 which is more of an open display, okay? So that is the effect that fooled Houdini. Now, I'm sure that a lot of you guys are probably somewhat disappointed that such a simple and easy effect actually fooled Houdini, but there's actually 2 particular reasons as to what made this effect so fooling. 1, Houdini was not that great of a magician. If you're new to magic, this fact may raise some eyebrows, But it's actually true. Houdini was not necessarily a great magician. His title as King of Cards was actually self-proclaimed, and it was more so an attempt at it was more so an attempt to try and garner more attention for himself, so then he could get more like business and all that stuff. But it didn't really work, and his career as a magician never really took off, right? Unlike his escape acts, okay? So the reason why he sort of shifted towards escape acts was because he was experimenting with them, and then that was what really gave him like his claim to fame, okay? So he was never that great of a magician. So Houdini did know sleight of hand, but he was never like that great at it. It was never his main thing, okay? So even though he knew the methods, he was never like the best at it, and he never really like fully adopted the magician persona, let's just say. The second reason as to why this effect actually fooled Houdini was because, unlike nowadays, double backers, double facers, blank cards, and all of that stuff were actually uncommon back in the day. Nowadays, a lot of magic decks actually include like gaff cards, right? Double backers, double facers, blank cards, whatever, right? But that was not the reality back then. In Vernon's era, these gaff cards, no one even knew they existed. Barely any people even knew they existed. And even if you did know about these cards, there was no guarantee that you had access to these cards. These cards were things that you had to specifically make, just like how magicians have to specifically make specialized gaff cards nowadays, right? Except that these are a lot simpler, but people still had to make these, okay? So things like double backers, blank cards, double facers, things that we see printed in decks nowadays, they had to manually make. And I mean, even nowadays, sometimes I manually make these gaffs myself. So people like Theodore Deland was one of those people who crafted these gaff cards. But in the case of this effect, Vernon claimed to have crafted these by himself. Nowadays, you can just buy like a deck full of double backers, full of double facers, full of like blue-red double backers, right? You can buy a deck full of those, but back then, they were a secret, and they were just a pain to get access to. So the double backer in this instance actually served a lot of the heavy lifting, because if there were no face-up cards, no discrepancy, Vernon in the end was able to cleanly show that this was one card, and the fact that people didn't know double backers existed back then, all those factors actually combined to make this effect a fooler for a lot of magicians, and not just Houdini. So the double backer in this instance actually did a lot of heavy lifting, because the fact that there was no face-up card, the fact that there was no discrepancy when Vernon was actually doing the effect, the fact that Vernon was able to cleanly show that this was one single card at the end of the effect, and the fact that people didn't know that double backers existed, meant that this effect fooled a lot of magicians, and not just Houdini himself. So ultimately, Houdini's own rather lackluster knowledge in magic, and also the fact that like these gaff cards, no one knew about them and no one knew how to use them, is what actually caused this effect to fool Houdini. Now, if you're interested in this effect, well, there's so many effects for ACRs out there, right? There's just so many effects. Like ACRs, like on its surface, like it's like everyone has one at this point, right? Everyone has their own variation of it, and it's so modular, like people can just like do what they want with ACRs. But if you're interested in this, in the gaff version of this effect, in Vernon's Vernon Revelations, the tapes, there is a download on the effect for the tapes on Vanishing Ink, so you can get those there. There's also Daryl's Ambitious Card Omnibus by Daryl, written by Stephen Minch, so you can get that book as well. And those are pretty much two very, very good resources. The first one is a good resource for the trick that fooled Houdini, and the second one is just a good resource in general for the Ambitious card. So you can go ahead and look at those two sources. If not, you can just do whatever that you want with Ambitious cards, because there's just so many options out there for this one particular effect. And that was the story of how Vernon fooled Houdini. It's one of those instances where I think the story is more interesting than the method. I mean, honestly, like the idea of like openly slipping a card second from top and then it going to the top, right? It's fine, but it's like, it's not really my sort of thing. I think nowadays it's also not a lot of people's things because it's just so simple and it's not like visual enough and all that stuff. But nowadays I think it's really easy to just look at this effect and be like, huh, I can't believe Houdini was actually fooled by something as simple as this. But then you have to take a step back and you have to remember the historical context behind it, right? And then you realize that if we didn't have all of these giants, if we didn't have all of our predecessors actually laying the path to what we are today, I think we would have gotten destroyed by this today. Imagine if we didn't know that double backers existed and that you could openly show that the end result was a single card with no discrepancy. That would be insane. Like, I think a lot of people would be wiped out by this effect if we didn't know double backers nowadays, right? But the fact that double backers are so prominent nowadays just makes this effect sort of silly in our eyes. But then it is important to take a step back and take a look at the broader picture and take into consideration that historically it wasn't always this way, that people had to pave the path to using something as simple as this, right? So yeah, I hope that you guys actually enjoyed this video. It's I think it's definitely a very, very interesting tale, and I think history-wise, it's actually very interesting to look at as well, because it's important to remember that magic is not only like, it's not necessarily a young art form or a craft, but it's something that has really only developed, that really boomed over the past like 100 or so couple of years, right? So I think that this is genuinely a very, very interesting effect and also a much more interesting story. So I hope that you guys enjoyed the trick that fooled Houdini. But yeah, I think that about wraps up for me today. Stay safe, stay healthy, and see you guys next time. And yeah, hope you appreciate a bit of history and a bit of magic at the same time.